Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm Catherine Jones, emotional and spiritual resilience coach and mentor, and I apologize for not being here live with you today and having to do this as a recording. I was rather keen to share the word about this amazing summit that we're doing, and subhanAllah, Facebook closed down my account, so I can't join you in Facebook until I resolve that. So this is the next best thing. I'm here to present you my topic in recording form, inshallah. So here we go. So today I'm really excited to share with you inner calm despite the outer chaos and how to prepare for the worst without fear, inshallah. What I discovered reading through your introductions and concerns, and this was up to a few hours ago when Facebook banned me, so if I've missed yours, please forgive me. Generally, there were fears, worries, anxieties. There was a lot of reflection and insight. There was so much faith, acceptance, and trust, and most of all, the amazing warmth, support, and caring that was amongst the sisters. It was really absolutely beautiful to go through. It was nearly over 100, I think, different introductions and stories that you all had to share, and every single one of you're just so beautiful and perfect just the way you are, and I'm so honored to be able to address your concerns today. And what I found was these were the key areas of concern where I kind of clustered them all together. So the virus itself, what's going to happen? How far is it going to spread? What's the impact going to be on us moving forward? Very much like the so much unknown. How it's going to affect children, older family members, the family in general, the vulnerable people. So there was a lot of concern about loved ones, vulnerable people, how this was all going to pan out for them. There were travel concerns, some that were separated from loved ones and couldn't travel, others who were pregnant and couldn't, or were trying to weigh up whether to travel, others that have been trapped somewhere because there's bans on travel. So there were lots of concerns around that as well. Concerns around the future, the economy, what the world will look like after this is all done. Balancing the dunya and akhirah, there was a lot about that actually, and I really feel that there's been quite an awakening where we've actually woken up and seen that perhaps we were too dunya focused, or perhaps the sight of death has reminded us of the akhirah, but that was definitely something that came up quite a bit. Ramadan and how that's going to look this year, because it's definitely going to be a very different Ramadan to the ones we've had before. Business, how it's going to affect people's business, because a lot of businesses are struggling, and mindsets around business, like, should I really be even thinking about business right now? What will people think if I'm kind of trying to sell them stuff right now with everything that's going on? Keeping children on track in lockdown, so keeping them busy, dealing with the chaos with having the kids home all the time. Just everybody as a family staying on track, busy, productive when in lockdown. Overwhelm around the panic and the reactions of others, how people are panic buying, how people are reacting to everything. Pregnancy, there were a number of sisters who are pregnant. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all with a safe pregnancy, birth, and a healthy child. Isolation, so being in isolation, that's quite scary for a lot of people, or scared for others who are in isolation who might normally depend on others and how they will manage. And supplies, just in general supplies, not just toilet paper or pasta or whatever it is that's in your country that's missing, but just overall how are supplies going to pan out. And especially there was one particular sister in the Caribbean where pretty much all their supplies are imported in, and so there was quite a concern of how that might look moving forward. So the virus, let's just tackle these one by one. The virus, just like everything else, is one of Allah's creation. And I actually had a moment today where I was imagining it as Allah's creation, and instead of thinking of it as the enemy, it was like it's just another one of Allah's creations that is doing what it does. Like everything in this amazing dunya that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, everything has a purpose. And even with all the conspiracy theories and some of the things that I also have looked into and perhaps, see some merit in, regardless, remember that even if humans have a plan, Allah's plan is the only one that's ever going to actually come to play. So even if there was some sort of human intervention in all of this, at the end of the day, it is still Allah's creation, and it is still part of the fabric of how this dunya works. So I found that actually was quite comforting to think of it as Allah's creation rather than as this thing. And it's already written who's going to catch it. It's already written who will die of it, who will recover. SubhanAllah. So there's also comfort in that, just knowing the fact that it's actually already written, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already has a plan around this. And that this isn't, random. It looks pretty random, but actually following some of the statistics and everything and following what different countries are doing, it's actually quite fascinating, because I've been tracking Australia versus Canada, right? Canada went into lockdown pretty early and Australia isn't. Like, we still have everything pretty much open. I mean, there are some things closed down, but school is still going ahead. Childcare is still going ahead. A lot of the things other countries have shut down are going ahead. And we've steadily been going on the same trajectory as Canada. So, it's looking, from what I'm seeing statistically, like lockdown or not lockdown, it's playing its course in a similar way. Allah knows best how this is going to play out. So us getting too preoccupied with what's happening here and there and the other, we're getting ourselves worked up over things that we don't even know what they're about. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator. He is the one in control, and it is already written how this is going to play out even before we even knew this virus existed. It's just a test like any other test. Every other test that we've had, whether we've gone through loss of life, whether we've gone through hardship in relationships, whether we've gone through hardship in loss of wealth, or in other forms of sickness or disability, other things that we have experienced as tests in this life. This is just another one of those tests, and that's all it is. It's on a massive scale, absolutely, but it's still just a test. Because that's what this life is, isn't it? That's all this life is about, is, are we passing the tests? So we're stepping into the unknown. And if we see it as we're just stepping into the unknown, there's something, well, I find quite reassuring and peaceful about that, because the unknown is the ghaib. And the ghaib is Allah's domain. We don't know it, but Allah is all aware of all of it. So we don't need to fear it. Just step into it and accept that, yes, it's unknown. But inshallah, every single one of us is going to be okay despite the tests and challenges we're facing. So how do we step into the unknown, or how do we actually get to that kind of acceptance? We need to understand where our feelings are coming from, because it tends to be our feelings that are getting in the way of that. And the thing that I want you to realize is the coronavirus doesn't actually need to go away for you to feel okay. You feeling okay is actually coming from your own thinking in the moment. When you think about it differently, then your experience of it will be different. And it's that simple, in fact, because our feelings come from our thought in the moment and not what is happening around us. It's not what's outside of us that's creating our feelings. It's our thought about what is happening outside of us that is giving the feelings that we're having. So I'm hoping, as I go through these slides with you today, that I'm going to give you so many other ways of looking at it, different perspectives, so that you can actually experience this differently, inshallah. So what about our loved ones, the young, the old, the vulnerable? Of course, a lot of people have a lot of worries about them, and that's totally understandable. We are taught that Allah will not burden us beyond what we can bear. And we think of that verse, we think of ourselves, and when we feel some peace and we go, okay, yeah, we're going to be all right, because Allah's not going to burden us with more than we can bear. But what about everyone else? Like, what about my elderly mother? Or what about my friend who has some sort of condition that makes her one of the vulnerable? What about my young children who have to still go to school because the government hasn't shut schools down? Well, it applies to them too. They're not going to be burdened with more than they can bear either, because that verse applies to each and every one of us. So, in fact, we're all going to be okay. All of our loved ones as well. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to stretch all of us in this test as much as we can bear. So we can expect to be stretched. We can expect this to be a test. And tests weren't meant to be easy. Otherwise, well, it just defeats the name test, doesn't it? If we don't feel like we can bear it, all that's happening is that the way we're thinking about it is the problem. It's not that what's happening is the problem. It's not that we can't bear it. It's just that we can't see that we can bear it in that moment because our thinking is creating a bit of a problem for us. And we're going to unpack that a bit more as we go through. So in this journey, some are going to get the golden ticket to Jannah as martyrs, because we're already told that people who die in a plague, and this could be considered a plague, it's been referred to like that amongst many of the people I've listened to, scholars speaking about this topic. And if we lose one of our loved ones, or if it's one of us, it's a golden ticket to Jannah. You know, we don't get many opportunities to get golden tickets to Jannah, right? SubhanAllah. And for some of us, we'll get a golden ticket to Jannah through our patience through this. Like some people will be the patient and they won't come to account because they have been so patient through this. And wouldn't that be great to get a golden ticket to Jannah? And when I mean a golden ticket, I mean we don't have to be accountable. We get to go straight to Jannah. I mean, it's better than the golden tickets in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And some of us, or most of us, we'll just get rewarded for how we show up. We might not get a golden ticket. So can you see how the concern around death, the death of ourselves or others, or what's going to happen, can take a very different feel? The feeling is what we're aiming at here, because we're talking about overcoming the fear. When we start noticing it as golden tickets rather than death, or rather than all the problems that we're going to face, there's golden tickets waiting for us, sisters, depending on how we show up through this test, subhanAllah. But what if I'm separated from them through isolation? Because this is a fear I've heard a lot, where some families have been in isolation and they're not able to tend to their elderly parents, or some of them are in special care, and those special cares have shut down and won't allow visitors. And then there's all this concern around, well, how do you manage family being with those who are in their last moments in life? They are under Allah's care. Every single one of them are under Allah's care. And if you are meant to be the one to care for them, then Allah will facilitate it for you. If you're meant to be the one that's there for them, Allah will facilitate it for you. If it's not being facilitated for you, if your qadr is that you are unable to help them, that is not something to feel guilty or upset about, because this was Allah's plan. And the thing is, if you're not meant to be there for them, then you were meant to be facing your test in a different way. And perhaps you're not seeing how that is because you're so preoccupied with how you can't do it. Perhaps you're focused on what you can't do, and you're missing out on your golden opportunities, your opportunities for one of those golden tickets. Again, see how when we think about it differently, it has a whole different feel about it. SubhanAllah. What about travel? Decisions like these need to come from wisdom. So at the moment, that decision can be taken out of our hands. There may be decisions made by governments that mean that we don't get to make a choice. But I know some people are in a position where they need to make a choice. Do they get reunited with their husband by taking the risk? Do I go back to my home country to give birth? Do I take the risk? That decision needs to come from wisdom, not from panic and really heady thinking, or intellectual thinking as I call it. It needs to come from the wisdom that's deep inside you as to what is the right thing to do. So where do you find this wisdom in these times? And this is really important because we have a lot of decisions to make in these times. We are facing times where we're not used to having to make these particular decisions. So we need that wisdom to guide us in those moments. And that wisdom is through our connection with Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who is all wise, and he is the one who is guiding us in every moment if we're listening and hearing his guidance, subhanallah. So it comes from the quiet recesses of your mind. When you are quiet inside, when you're very present in this moment and you can actually notice how Allah is guiding you, then you will find that wisdom. It doesn't come from the really busy, hectic thinking in your head where you're trying to figure it out yourself. So when you accept that this is the qadr of Allah and ask yourself what would please Allah most in this moment, that is when you're going to find the wisdom, inshallah, and the right decision. And of course, never forget to pray istikhara prayer, because once you've made a decision and you hand it over to Allah in that istikhara prayer, then you know if it happens that it was good for you, and if it doesn't happen, it wasn't. Whatever the outcome is, it was meant to happen that way, and you've handed it over to Allah, and you've not made that decision from your own nafs, your own ego. So wisdom comes in this present moment, not from being panicky about the future, not from dwelling on the past, from being in this present moment so that you can see what is really happening right now, what is really needed right now, and how is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to show up right now in this moment. What if I can't find a quiet mind? When our thoughts go wild, we lose our wisdom. The thing that is the barrier between our connection with Allah, between our wisdom, between having that guidance from Allah, it's always there. It's our thoughts. And the following, our thoughts are our feelings, because our feelings come from thought in the moment. So anxious feelings, stressful feelings, fearful feelings are always coming from stressful thoughts, anxious thoughts, and fearful thoughts. So when those thoughts are taking over, we lose our wisdom. And when we lose our wisdom, we also are losing our connection to Allah. Many people were commenting about building a good connection with Allah, having tawakkul, trust in Allah, hope in Allah, all of those things in their areas of concern. So when your mind goes quiet, when you're in this present moment, you will find that that is there for you, just like it is for every single other person, subhanAllah. And when we lose that connection to Allah, when our thoughts are going crazy, we become focused on this dunya. We become focused on what's going to happen with this, what's going to happen with that, what do I have to do? All that thinking, it becomes dunya focused. We're not appreciating what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught us about Him being there for us, that He is always there for us, subhanallah. So what are these thoughts? Why are they a problem? Thoughts are constant. So our thinking is constant. We have about 70,000 thoughts per day. And of course, we only remember a handful of them. So there's so much thinking going on that you're not even aware of, right? And the thoughts themselves aren't a problem. You can't control what thoughts come into your head. That's not what this is about. You could sit here and try and control your thinking and you will exhaust yourself. And a lot of people are really tired because that's what they're trying to do. But that's not how it works. So thought itself is actually neutral. It's the story we put around the thought that creates the positive or negative experience. The problems arise when we hold on to that story. Let me give you an example, all right? So what if I catch corona? That seems to be, or one of our loved ones catches corona, right? That seems to be on the forefront of many of our minds. But for some of us, we're actually quite calm about it. And for others, we're quite frantic and anxious and fearful about it. So let's break it down. Let's look at the negative train of thought. So what if I catch corona on its own as a thought is neutral? But when you start going into the story around, oh, if I catch corona, it means that my whole family will be in lockdown. That means that no one can earn an income. If I end up in hospital, who's going to look after the kids? And you start going down this negative train of thought. And the experience becomes more fearful, more anxious, more stressful. The thoughts get rapid, like they get more and more rapid. It's like breeding like rabbits, right? And that's it. You're off on this train. It's a runaway train. Off it's gone. Or you could be on a positive train of thought where, what if I catch corona? Well, you know what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the provider, the sustainer, the protector. It's all going to work out. And guess what? That thought didn't take life. It's gone now, and I'm on to the next thought. It's like bubbles, actually. You know, it's interesting they call them thought bubbles when in cartoons and things like that, because thinking is like bubbles. If you've got a bubble machine and bubbles flowing, they just come and they pop. They come and they pop, and that's how it's meant to work. We're not meant to hang on to them. So it's the hanging on to them and going down that train of thought that causes us grief. Both were the same initial thought, but both had a very different experience. And all of it was just thought. Nothing else was changing around me as I talked about each of those thoughts. But the experience of it, if I believed in what I was thinking around the negative thoughts, would have been very different. If I really did worry about those things, then I wouldn't sleep at night. I would be tense and anxious. I would probably have headaches. I would probably be craving sugar and all these sorts of things that make me even more unhealthy, which then also lead me to be more susceptible to not recovering from it, or being susceptible to getting it in the first place. You see, it's all not helpful, and it all was thought. That's all it was. Nothing changed. I didn't catch it. I was just sitting here thinking about it. All of it was thought. And all of it was an imaginary picture of the future. It wasn't real. It felt real because we're experiencing life through thought. And so what we think about appears real to us, but it may not actually be real. And in this particular example, it wasn't real. It was imaginary. So what will the future look like? This was a concern that came up from many. The unknown, except to Allah. It's the ghaib. We don't know. But do you know what is interesting? It was like that before the virus too. We didn't know whether we were going to go out tomorrow and get hit by a bus, or whether we would get cancer, or whether, you know, our pregnancy would be a good pregnancy, whether we would have a healthy child. I mean, I've had a child that I lost, alhamdulillah. You know, she's in Jannah. Inshallah, on the day of judgment, she'll be calling for me to enter into Jannah with her. You know, alhamdulillah. So I get all these experiences. I've been through a lot. And there were so many unknowns. Like when I left my abusive marriage, and I had been told for so many years that I'd be hunted down and killed if I did that and took the kids, right? So that was a big unknown, but I had to put my trust in Allah. I had to have faith in Allah, and I had to make that step, because it wasn't healthy for us to be in that environment. So before this virus, we didn't know the future either. We didn't know if the economy was going to fall out either, you know. It is only the overload of information and thoughts and theories in our heads that has us worrying about this particular thing right now. If this was happening in the past, firstly, there wouldn't have been the travel to spread it. Secondly, there wouldn't have been the information technology for the information to spread so quickly either. So we're living in an era of information overload, and that's keeping our minds busy so that we lose that connection with Allah. It's no wonder that, you know, there's so much warning around these things, subhanAllah. We're creating a picture of a monster in our mind and then freaking out about it. That's essentially what we're doing when we start painting a picture of what the future might look like. Allah is the all-wise. He's the protector. He is the sustainer. And in fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sufficient for us. That's all we need to know. And the only other thing about the future is that verse that I repeated before, where Allah says He will not burden a soul beyond it can bear, means that whatever the future holds, we're going to be okay. We don't need to worry about the future because we're going to be okay, because Allah has already told us He'll never burden us with more than we can bear. So balancing the dunya and the akhirah, and it was so interesting to see so many people mention that, subhanallah. It was a common thread in the comments. It feels like there's an awakening there, that perhaps we've snapped out of our autopilot, and seeing death in numbers before us has us thinking more about the akhirah. And then, of course, there being such stressful logistics around the dunya, it feels like a tug of war between the two. Chances are we were actually asleep before and there was still that tug of war, but we just weren't noticing it. It's just come to the forefront of our mind. The balancing between the dunya and the akhirah, it's always there. It's always part of our test, subhanallah. We're actually thinking about this instead of being on autopilot. So it's actually a good thing that this is coming up in the thread of conversation, alhamdulillah. So it's about a balance of fear and hope. Love of Allah, but balanced with fear and hope. But I want to break fear down. I want to break fear down to the dunya fear versus the akhirah fear. The akhirah fear, it's not a fear that is really debilitating. It's more like if we talk about fear, is the fear of authority, like of displeasing our parents or displeasing our boss or something like that. It's that displeasing Allah, fearing displeasing Allah and Allah's displeasure, right? It's very different to the dunya fear. It actually is a more hopeful sort of fear. It's more stabilizing, keeps us humble, and aware of what we're doing and reflective. It's a positive thing. But this dunya fear, fearing Allah's creation, and this virus, as I said, is just one of Allah's creation. Over fearing Allah doesn't make sense. That fear is the fear that seems out of control, that leads to panic attacks, to anxiety attacks, to overwhelm, and all these stressful experiences that everybody is having. SubhanAllah, not everybody's having. Many are having. I do apologize. I am doing this recording with all my family demanding me to cook dinner, trying to meet the deadline of having this ready in time. So every so often they're interrupting me and my thread of thinking gets off track. So hope, gratitude, resilience, patience are actually our natural state. These are the things that we need to get through this, and these are the things that are actually already natural in every single one of you. Just look at a little child, a toddler, a baby, at the hope, the gratitude, the resilience, and the patience in them. The way they continue regardless of the hardships. If they're trying to learn to walk and they keep falling down, they get back up again. It is our natural state. It is our fitra state. And the only thing in the way of us having that hope, gratitude, resilience, and patience that we need to get through this test, and excuse the shouting in the background too, they're all feral tonight, subhanallah. It's Friday night here after a week of school and everything that's going on, and so I am really definitely struggling tonight to have 100% attention here. So all of that is our natural state. The only thing that's our barrier to it is our thinking. All that messed up thinking that's going on crazy in our head is what's in our way. What's there when our thinking slows and we come back to this moment is our hope, gratitude, resilience, and patience. It's there naturally within us. You don't need to build it. You don't need to work on it. You don't have to practice it. You don't have to do positive affirmations. You just need your thinking to slow down and come back to this present moment, and it will naturally be there for you. And I'm not just saying this from myself. I have so many sisters I've worked with who will say the same thing, and even non-Muslims who understand this principle of feelings coming from thought in the moment to have exactly the same experience. They may not have the same understanding as we do, that this wisdom and this fitra is from Allah, but they still get it. They still sense it, subhanallah. So Ramadan, it's going to be a different Ramadan, but let's look at it as a new adventure. Let's think about it as an adventure. When our thinking falls away, creative thinking emerges, and we'll start thinking about creative ways. My brain has already been churning over and thinking, okay, Ramadan's going to be different, but let's embrace this and come up with some exciting ways to have this Ramadan. Look for new opportunities and ways to really connect as a family and do things as a family. It's a chance to reflect because there'll be less hustle and bustle. There's going to be less craziness around iftars and then rushing off to Taraweeh and rushing here and rushing there. We may have the most beautiful Ramadan we ever have because we're more present in the moment, subhanAllah. And we can find that beautiful connection with Allah anywhere and at any time. And I'm going to tell you a really quick story about that. When I was on Hajj, I couldn't believe that I would ever feel that feeling that it feels like on Hajj with that connection to Allah ever again, unless I went back to Hajj again. It really felt like it was I felt like my heart was going to explode, right? And the tears just came effortlessly. I totally understood how Abu Bakr would cry till his beard was wet when I was there, right? And I thought, when I come back, that's it. And I even, the following Hajj season, felt really depressed because I wasn't there and getting that opportunity to feel that again. You know what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed me with a moment to discover that actually we can have that feeling, that beautiful connection with Allah at any time, anywhere. Because there was this one night, and I wasn't in the habit of praying the night prayers, but I suddenly had this urge to pray. So I went and did wudu, put my prayer gear on, and I just stood there in my lounge room. The carpet still had crumbs on from dinner, and I didn't even put a prayer mat down, so I was praying in this crumbs, and I just felt it again. It was there again in that moment, because all the thinking that was in the way of that had fallen away. And I just had that really quiet moment with Allah, just like it felt on Hajj. So it's our thinking that creates our experience. If we're having thinking that Ramadan's not going to be okay because of this, we're not going to enjoy Ramadan. But if we see Ramadan as an adventure, we may have the best Ramadan we've ever had and not realize just what we've been missing out on all these years, subhanAllah. So we had questions around business. How will my business survive? I don't know. Only Allah knows that. But if you have creative thinking versus defeated thinking, there's a good chance your business may thrive rather than just survive through this. Because with creative thinking, we can come up with whole new ways of doing things that we didn't have before. I had to come up with creative thinking to get this to you tonight when my Facebook account got shut down. SubhanAllah. A diamond is created from immense pressure. Remember that. Beauty doesn't come, the beauty of the diamond doesn't come without that immense pressure. So who knows what may actually evolve out of this. But what will people think if I'm business-minded in the middle of all of this? Well, yes, that question has come up, I think, 2 or 3 times I've seen it, subhanAllah. Well, my question to you is, who is going to run things if everybody stops? If everyone stops business, then how is life going to continue? And if your business is providing something useful, then why would you stop? Do you see how the question changing makes a completely different outlook to that whole situation? It's how you think about it, not what others think. And just another little reminder besides, how do you know what they're thinking anyway? None of us are mind readers. Okay, so we're stopping our own selves with our own thinking around that, subhanAllah. Children in lockdown, yes, well you've heard, we're not even in lockdown and I've got kids screaming in the background. I've got 2 of them having a bit of sibling rivalry back there, so I'm not sure if it's coming through on the mic or not, but every so often there's a scream, subhanAllah. So how will I cope? That question for a start is already creating the problem, because that question comes from a sense of hopelessness or a sense of I don't know. Whereas if we think about it differently, what about the new opportunities to connect with the children? What about the new opportunities to do other things together as a family? Because not everybody's around being busy with each other. Are you having too high an expectation on yourself and them on how this is meant to look? Perhaps you just need to spend some time chilling. In fact, why not be a fun mum? It's actually so much easier when you're a fun mum. For instance, if I wasn't busy recording this, I'd be in there doing something with these guys to get them back on track so that they're not screaming in the background. But I need to finish this in time to have it ready for you. But being the fun mum is so much easier. The kids connect more, their behavior gets back on track. And honestly, it's so much nicer as a mum yourself too, subhanallah. And I'll be doing a whole discussion on this next week, in the next week or so, inshallah, because I know there's going to be a lot of stressed out mums out there, and I've got a lot around peaceful parenting that I'd love to share with them to make it easier, inshallah. So it boils down to how we think about it. Again, it's all about how we think. So, overwhelmed by the panic around you. This seemed to be a good common thread in there as well, that the panic buying, the craziness of people's behavior and everything is affecting the way people are feeling. Each and every one of us has the ability to think, alhamdulillah, right? We all have the ability to think. And just because one person sees doom doesn't mean we all have to join them. We all have the ability to think our own thoughts and have our own perspectives and our own separate realities of this. We get caught up in others' thinking and we adopt it as our own, and then we lose sight of our own good thinking, and now we're panicking too. That's all that's happening. We're actually adopting someone else's thinking. And we don't need to do that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed each and every one of us with the ability to think, and in fact throughout the Quran He's always asking us to reflect. So let's reflect and see what's really going on here instead of getting caught up in somebody else's negative train of thought. So why did you believe they knew best anyway? Why did you think that it was worth jumping on their train of thought in the first place? At the end of the day, it's only Allah who knows. Allahu alim. So let's turn to Allah. Let's turn to Allah. He knows best. And then the last ones were pregnancy, isolation, and supplies. These are actually logistical situations. How are we going to get supplies? What do we do about isolation? What do I do about my pregnancy? I know there's fear around catching it and being pregnant, and that's not what I'm addressing here. I'm talking about, how are you going to manage the logistics of the birth with everything that's going on with the healthcare systems and everything like this. This is logistics. And in order for us to solve the logistics, we need wisdoms. Worry doesn't solve logistics. Wisdom does. When you go into that wise state, when you follow how Allah is guiding you, everything begins to flow. Everything falls into place. It's all about tawakkul, putting your trust in Allah. Wisdom comes from deep within, not from our heady thinking, not from our intellectual thinking. It comes from within through our connection with Allah. So if we're trying to nut it all out with our intellectual thinking, we're missing the most beautiful of all opportunities to tap into the wisdom of Allah that comes through a quiet mind and a heart in connection with Him. So all you need to do is get quiet, find the wisdom, put your trust in Allah, and off you go and tie your camel, inshallah. So the truth. Worry, stress, fear, anxiety do not make anything better. In fact, often worse. They prevent you from having that beautiful connection with Allah, having access to wisdom on what you're meant to be doing right now, the opportunity to have creative thinking and new opportunities, and seeing the massive blessings in all of this. And yes, there are so many blessings in all of this. I saw that yesterday, Sister Naima put in there, write down the 25 things you're grateful for. I have found so much more gratitude in this time. I found so many blessings, so many insights have come out of what's going on. SubhanAllah, noticing myself and the people around me and what's happening. See, we're going to miss those blessings if we're in worry, stress, fear, or anxiety. So what I want you to do is breathe. If you get anxious, focus on breathing out, because sometimes when we're really anxious, our body gets confused and we think we can't breathe, and actually what it is our lungs are already full. So breathe out, focus on breathing out, and you won't panic about the breathing in. And actually your breathing may well actually just come into alignment by itself. Shake your body, shake your arms. It releases the tension in the body. Make dua to Allah. He's the one in charge, right? Make dua. Don't forget how powerful dua is. and check in with yourself and ask, what does Allah expect of me right now? What does Allah expect of me right now, just now? Not in the future, not what did he expect before and now I regret it. No, what does he expect of me right now? And focus on that. And then in the next moment again, what am I meant to be doing right now to please Allah? And focus on that. That's called being in the present moment, and nothing else except that matters. Nothing else except right now matters, because nothing else actually exists. Only right now exists. The future doesn't exist. The past doesn't exist. We know that logically. I want you to believe that with all your heart and soul. The only time that matters is right now, this moment. What are you doing to please Allah right now? What are you meant to be doing right now? And it works because in the remembrance of Allah, the hearts find rest. Because when you're thinking like that, you are in a state of remembrance of Allah, because you're asking yourself, what does Allah expect of me right now? And that's what it's all about. If we're in that state of thinking, our experience is going to be a heart of rest in connection with Allah. Because we're always living in the feelings of our thinking in this moment. SubhanAllah. So I want to thank you for your valuable time. I ask your forgiveness for all the shortcomings in this presentation. And I would love you to please share your takeaways in the comments and any questions in the comments. And as soon as Facebook let me back in, I will come and address them, inshallah. And I want to leave you with a special gift. If you go to weareallok.com, spelled WERALLOK.com, you will discover that counselors, psychologists, and therapists couldn't tell you about your innate emotional resilience. I call it We Are All Okay, the missing link, because it is the missing link. Please, please, please go and get that. What you will find once you've logged into that is that there is an opportunity to opt into a special class I'm going to do next week as well. And I would really love for you to continue to benefit from this understanding of feelings coming from thought in the moment by continuing your journey with me. weareallok.com. Go and download your ebook and then register for the class next week. And then inshallah, I will see you next week and support you further in finding that inner peace and that inner calm, and that you can navigate this coronavirus without fear, inshallah. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.